There are farmers in the Texas Panhandle right now pulling up irrigation pipes they have used for 40 years and stacking them in their barns, not because they are retiring, not because the market is bad, because the water is gone. Wells that hit water at 30 feet in 1980 now have to go 300 feet down and still come up dry in places. Cotton fields that fed families for 3 generations are going back to dust. Towns built around irrigation agriculture, Hereford, Muleshoe, Plainview, are watching their economic base evaporate along with the water table. A University of Texas projection published in 2025 found that up to 70% of the Texas Panhandle will be unusable for irrigation within 20 years if current pumping rates continue. 70%. Within 20 years. Now here is the part that connects directly to everything this channel has been telling you about the Ozarks. The same investment funds, the same types of buyers, using the same shell company structures, the same offshore registration strategies, the same playbook that have been quietly acquiring Ozarks land and locking off access to communities that have lived there for generations are now operating in Texas. And in Texas, they are not just buying the land, they are buying the water beneath it separately as a financial asset to sell later to whoever needs it most when the wells run dry. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is documented in Texas property records, in water district filings, and in the investment strategies of firms that have been public about exactly what they are doing. Subscribe right now. Hit the button and the bell. You need to understand one law to understand all of this. It is called the rule of capture, and it has been Texas water law for over a century. The rule is simple enough to say in one sentence, if you own the land above an aquifer in Texas, the water underneath belongs to you, and you can pump as much of it as you want. No limits on quantity, no sharing requirements with neighbors, no liability if your pumping dries up the well next door. A lawyer who has spent decades in Texas water cases described the practical effect this way. It is basically the law of the biggest pump wins. Your neighbor pumps more aggressively than you. Your well goes dry, and the law says that is just bad luck. Texas did create local groundwater conservation districts specifically to regulate pumping, but the rule of capture effectively defangs them. If a district tries to meaningfully restrict how much a large landowner can pump, that landowner can sue. And Texas courts have consistently protected the rule. A water expert who served as chairman of the Texas Water Development Board put it plainly. It would be near impossible to undo the law at this point. The legal inertia behind a century of property rights claims is immovable, so the Ogallala keeps declining. The state water plan, the official document Texas uses to manage its water future, acknowledges a 25% decline in groundwater availability by 2070. That is the official projection. The unofficial projections from university researchers are more severe. A 2025 University of Texas analysis found that 70% of the Texas Panhandle could become unusable for irrigation within 20 years. Hydrologists studying specific counties use a word that does not appear in official state documents. They call what is happening in the worst affected areas the economic extinction of irrigation, the point at which the cost of drilling deep enough to reach the remaining water exceeds the value of what the water can grow. In parts of the Panhandle, economic extinction is not a future projection. It has already arrived. In Hereford, Texas, once called the beef capital of the world because the Ogallala made it possible to sustain the feedlot operations that fed cattle from across the region. Water managers are already discussing what the town looks like when the aquifer can no longer support industrial agriculture. In Muleshoe, families that farmed the same land for 3 generations are making exit calculations they never thought they would have to make. In Plainview, where the aquifer has declined dramatically in living memory, the conversation is no longer about conservation. It is about transition to what? Nobody is certain. Hit the like button. It tells the algorithm this story matters. Now watch what the rule of capture makes possible when sophisticated investors start paying attention. In 2011, T. Boone Pickens owned more water rights than any other individual in America. Not water utilities, not municipal systems, water rights, the legal claim to pump a specific portion of an underground aquifer. He had acquired 150,000 acres of land in Roberts County, Texas, in the remote panhandle northeast of Amarillo, and he had done it specifically because the land sat above one of the most productive remaining sections of the Ogallala. His plan was not subtle. He ate exactly what he intended to do. He was going to pump the water, build a pipeline, and sell it south to San Antonio and El Paso and other Texas cities that were running out of supply. He called it a water business. The Roberts County judge at the time calculated that Pickens controlled rights to approximately 400,000 acre-feet of water that could legally be exported from the county. He was going to treat water the way his industry had always treated oil, find it beneath the ground, extract it, and sell it at market price to whoever needed it most. Pickens is gone now. His water business never executed the way he planned. The pipeline economics did not work out, and the political resistance was stiffer than he anticipated. But the logic he articulated publicly in 2011 has quietly become the operating thesis of dozens of investment firms that are less famous and considerably less candid about what they are doing. Harvard University has been purchasing California farmland, specifically targeting properties with strong water rights overlying major aquifers. Michael Burry, who became famous for betting against the 2008 mortgage market and being right, told investors after the financial crisis that water was one of his primary focuses going forward, not water treatment companies, not desalination technology. Water itself acquired through land with strong groundwater rights. A firm called Greenstone bought 485 acres of farmland in Cibola, Arizona, in 2013 and 2014 for $9.8 million, leased it back to farmers for 4 years to maintain the water rights through beneficial use requirements, then sold those water rights alone to a Phoenix suburb for $24 million. The farmland was never the point. It was just the vehicle. The water beneath it was always the asset. Here is the specific connection that should make Ozarks viewers pay attention. The Ozark Aquifer, the freshwater system beneath the Missouri Ozarks that this channel has covered extensively, sits in a state that in 2025 passed a law specifically restricting water exports after neighboring states began calculating how to access Missouri's water as their own aquifers failed. Kansas is one of those states. Kansas sits directly above the dying Ogallala. Kansas lawmakers have been discussing for years how to access water from states to the east, states with functional aquifer systems, as their own supply declines. Missouri passed its water export restriction law in direct response to documented proposals that would have piped Missouri River water westward. The Ogallala failing in Texas and Kansas and Oklahoma is not a distant problem for the Ozarks. It is the pressure system that is building toward the Ozarks from the west. As the aquifer beneath the Great Plains depletes, the value of the water beneath the Ozarks increases. As that value increases, the incentive for outside buyers to acquire Ozarks land, which carries access to Ozarks groundwater, intensifies. The buyers already in the Ozarks understood this before most Ozarks residents did. That is why they are already there. In Texas right now, in the Panhandle counties where the Ogallala has declined the most severely, something specific is happening to the land. Farmers who can no longer irrigate are selling. They are selling to whoever shows up with cash and offers a price that lets them exit without going bankrupt. The buyers showing up are not neighboring farmers looking to expand. Neighboring farmers have the same water problem. The buyers are investment entities that do not need to irrigate because they did not buy the land to farm it. They bought it for the water rights attached to it, which they will hold until the scarcity of water in surrounding areas makes those rights worth multiples of what they paid for the land. The farmers are leaving. The investment funds are arriving. The wells are going dry. And a law written over a century ago, when the aquifer felt infinite and the idea of treating groundwater as a financial asset to be extracted and sold seemed like something out of a different world, is the legal mechanism that makes all of it possible and prevents the communities above the aquifer from doing anything meaningful to stop it. The Ozarks community watched the same pattern from a different angle. Outside buyers arriving quietly, acquiring land through entities that obscure who the real owners are, locking off access that communities had relied on for generations, and doing all of it through legal mechanisms that the affected communities cannot easily challenge. The buyers are not identical. The mechanism is. The outcome for the communities living above the water is the same, and the pattern is moving east. Subscribe if you haven't. Hit the bell. Drop a comment. Did you make the connection between the Ogallala and the Ozarks before this video? Because the people buying both of them did a long time ago. Thank you for watching. The truth doesn't shout. It waits for you to look closer.